I've been talking about low carb diets for over 15 years. And ketogenic diets, really specifically, I started testing that nutritional ketosis back in 2012. And even then, as I was doing my N=1 experimentation of nutritional ketosis, which ended up turning into this book down the road, even then I was telling people, don't try to mimic what I'm doing. What I'm doing is what I'm doing because it's what's working for me. And I think part of the confusion that comes into play when it comes to the ketogenic diet is people think it's formulaic. And so when you make something formulaic that was never intended to be formulaic, in other words, like macronutrient ratios, like all these people that want you to have a percentage of this macronutrient and the percentage of that, and so you're trying to fit your macros, that has always been weird to me, because that doesn't really personalize it to the individual. And then some people tend to need more protein. Some people tend to do better with more fat. Even some people do pretty good with more carbohydrate. And so it's kind of, how do you personalize that ketogenic approach for you? And so I have a brand new paper that has 4 of the biggest names in the research world when it comes to ketogenic diets. And they make the argument in their paper, which I'm going to read today, they make the argument that we need to be looking at genetic factors and other lifestyle factors in individuals to help them figure out how to personalize their keto. Now, that seems elementary, but think about this. A lot of this genetic testing has only come along in the past few years. And so when I even first started blogging back in 2005, none of this stuff was at our fingertips. None of this stuff was available. Now we have so many more tools. We have so many more ways to test for things. And in that testing, we can see, okay, you're going to tend to do a little better with more saturated fat. You're going to do a little better with less carbohydrate and da-da-da-da-da. Whereas someone else may get some genetic markers where, oh, you're going to need to prioritize protein first. You're probably one that doesn't necessarily need to be full on keto all the time. Maybe you cycle in and out. So having these tools at our disposal, I really think this is the next wave in nutrition and health. And everybody likes to ask me, because I got very fortunate writing Keto Clarity, was way ahead of the curve on keto. They're like, what's the next diet trend? And really, like, in my gut, I don't think the next diet trend is a diet at all. I think the next trend in nutrition, the next trend in health is customizing the diet that's right for you. Now, you can't get a big splash promoting a customized diet. But quite frankly, I don't care about splash. I care more about what's going to actually help people. So if you're just joining us, I am about to read from a paper from some researchers, ketogenic researchers, who promote creating personalized keto plans based on your genetics. And so the paper was published in the BMJ, British Medical Journal, Nutrition, Prevention, and Health. So this is a journal that tries to help people and researchers put out information that would help people determine their nutrition and preventative care and being healthy. The title of the paper, Genetic Variants for Personalized Management of Very Low Carbohydrate Ketogenic Diets. And the 4 researchers, I know all 4 of these people personally. Lucia Aronica, she's kind of a new kid on the block. She's at Stanford, where Christopher Gardner is her mentor. Christopher Gardner did the A to Z study way back in the day in like 2007. Huge study that showed low-carb ketogenic diets have efficacy, and he's a vegetarian. And so Lucia now works for him. Dr. Jeff Volek, who needs no introduction. Him and that guy back there, Steve Finney, have done a lot of research. In fact, Dr. Volek wrote the Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, which I actually had a chapter in that book, which is why it's by me. So he was one of the co-authors. Angela Poff is another new kid on the block that's out there doing some great research. She's a part of the Metabolic Health Summit that takes place in California, Long Beach. I'm not sure if they're doing one next year because of 9-1 DIVOC, but she's one of the researchers on here. And then Dr. Dominique D'Agostino, who is Angela Poff's colleague in the research world. And of course, Dom has done an amazing job looking at ketosis, looking at really every angle of ketogenic diets, especially exogenous ketones, Navy SEALs, da-da-da-da-da. So, as you can see, superstar group of researchers that wanted to look at this question of how do we personalize a low-carb ketogenic diet by looking at key genetic markers. Now, I'm going to warn you ahead of time. These are some nerdy people, and so they write really nerdy. Now, Jimmy is good at translating nerd, but as you have seen before when I've gone over papers, I sometimes struggle with the words because it's a little nerdy, but I'll try to give you the gist. There is one part in here. Please stick around, guys. Don't go anywhere. There's one part in here where if you have high cholesterol after you went keto, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Why do I have high cholesterol? They actually have a sidebar in this paper which explains all of us, I'm one of those people, all of us who tend to have higher cholesterol when we eat a ketogenic diet, they have identified what they think might be a genetic marker that would indicate what that's all about. So stick around for that. When we get to that, I will definitely highlight it for you. But let's read the paper. In the abstract, it says the ketogenic diet is a low carbohydrate, high fat, adequate protein diet. It's proven to be effective for the reversal of obesity, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes, and holding therapeutic potential for the prevention and treatment of all kinds of chronic diseases. Genetic and dynamic markers of ketogenic diet response may help identify individuals most likely to benefit from the ketogenic diet and point to individuals at higher risk for having adverse health outcomes. That's one of the things that since I've been online, oh my gosh, you eat that low carb diet, all that, you're going to clog your arteries and hurt yourself, and they've just kind of thrown these things out there. And perhaps it was with good intentions that a lot of those warnings were put out there about low carb diets, but it was never an across the board thing. And so what these researchers are doing is, okay, maybe there are a few individuals who have a higher risk for adverse health outcomes, but let's look at what could predict that before we put them on such a diet. Could you imagine if you went to your doctor and you said, hey, I want to lose weight, I want to get healthy, and the doctor's like, all right, let's run some genetic tests to see what would work best for you. How cool would that be? Now, mainstream medicine, it's not going to happen, but a lot of functional medicine doctors do run this kind of genetic testing. In fact, I am in the process right now. The kit is on the way. Dr. Ben Lynch has a new book called Dirty Genes, and Ben reached out to me on Instagram recently, and he said, hey, I've had this new book. I'm like, yeah, I want to interview you on my podcast. He said, I want to do something else. I want to run a full genetic kind of markers test on you. And I'm like, yeah. So I never turned down getting genetic markers. I know my MTHFR. I know various markers, but it would be really cool to know a full array of them. And so there are practitioners out there like Dr. Ben Lynch and others and a lot of functional medicine doctors who do run a lot of genetic tests, which then helps guide them about what diet and what supplements and things will work for the individual. Here we provide a clinician-friendly review of the state-of-the-art research on biomarkers of ketogenic diet response for a variety of outcomes, including weight loss, body composition, cognitive performance, drawing data from both intervention trials, that's where they directly go in and have them do a specific protocol, and case reports of rare inborn errors of metabolism. So this is where people have had something happen to them and they do a case report. That's the kind of study. We also present a selection of the most promising candidate genes to evaluate in future studies. So the hope with this paper is we'll identify what we think are the genetic markers. Now, researchers go out there and go prove it. And we discussed the key aspects of study design and variant interpretation that may help accelerate the implementation of these biomarkers in clinical practice. Yeah, part of the issue is they think they're testing keto, and they're not testing keto at all because the carbohydrates are too high. We've talked about that before in other studies. I've seen studies where the carbohydrate intake is as much as 45 to 50%, and they're calling it keto. And no. It's not low carb in any way when it's 45 to 50% of your calories. All right, let's get into this. And if you just joined us, we are reading from a brand new paper published in the BMJ Nutrition, Prevention, and Health. The title of the paper, and I'm saying all this because people always complain when I post this to YouTube and various places. I need a link to the study. Well, Google this, DuckDuckGo this, genetic variants for personalized management of very low carbohydrate ketogenic diets. Again, BMJ Nutrition, Prevention, and Health. The researchers Aronica, Volek, Poff, and D'Agostino. So go look it up if you want to look at it yourself. Introduction. As the field of precision medicine is gaining traction, nutrition research is experiencing a gold rush for biomarkers that may enable the selection of personalized dietary intervention to maximize an individual's likelihood of a successful response. These biomarkers include both genetic factors and dynamic biomarkers that respond to lifestyle factors, things like physiological markers, epigenetics, transcriptomics, metabolomics, and the microbiome. So these are all things that have been readily available for clinicians to use. They just have not used it because they don't know what to do with it. The use of biomarkers of dietary response would be of particular clinical relevance for the selection of individualized risk-benefit analysis of therapeutic diets, things like the ketogenic diet, which provide alternative or complementary therapies to standard of care treatment. So doctors have to follow this whole standard of care, which means they have set guidelines of when patient exhibits X symptom, this is the care that you give them. This is the ICD code that you use so that their insurance pays for it and da-da-da. What if they added in some of these markers as part of the protocol in conjunction with the standard of care? Right now, most doctors keep head down standard of care, head down standard of care, head down standard of care, and they're not looking at the patient. They're not seeing if maybe there's something in their family history that could be contributing to why they have said condition that they're dealing with. And so what this study aims to do, what this paper aims to do, is to get it on their radar screen of, hey, we've got all these tools at our disposal, let's start using them. The ketogenic diet is a low carbohydrate, high fat, adequate protein diet. It was historically used to treat epilepsy and diabetes a century ago, prior to the discovery of insulin and anti-seizure medications. The latest scientific evidence shows that ketones are both preferred fuels and potent signaling molecules that dramatically increase the number of investigations into the basic science of ketones and their applications across broad disciplines. Ketones demonstrate, and here we go with some of the words that I'm going to have to struggle with, pleiotropic actions affecting gene expression and pathways, things like inflammation, oxidative stress, immune function, membrane health, cell signaling, and antioxidant status that then manifest in the reversal of metabolic disease and extended health span. So all of these things are what lead to disease: inflammation, oxidative stress, immune function disorder, membrane disorder, cell signaling is off, antioxidants are off. When those things get corrected, then your health improves. And so what they're saying is a ketogenic diet is what makes that reversal of all those things take place. The most remarkable therapeutic evidence of ketogenic diets is the rapid and sustained reversal of obesity, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes in a plethora of recently published research. Preclinical and other evidence points to ketogenic diets as a promising therapeutic intervention in other chronic diseases, things like Alzheimer's disease and certain types of cancer. In fact, when we wrote Keto Clarity 6 years ago, we put in there that that was where the emerging evidence for ketogenic diets was happening. And it is. And now today we have a lot more research all about things like Alzheimer's and other cancers.